Robert Calloway stared at the concerning reports on his mahogany desk, the afternoon sun streaming through his corner office windows. As the chief financial officer of Midstate Retail Chain, a company with over 30 locations across 3 states, he had risen through the ranks over 20 years because he understood numbers better than most. But these particular numbers troubled him deeply. Employee turnover had increased by 23% in the past quarter alone. Productivity was down. Staff satisfaction surveys showed a downward trend that couldn't be ignored. Something was wrong at the store level, and spreadsheets weren't telling the full story. There's only one way to truly understand what's happening, Robert murmured to himself, setting down his fountain pen. At 52, with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses he'd finally admitted needing last year. He wasn't exactly cut out for undercover work. But the idea had taken root. That evening, he pitched his plan to Linda, the CEO, over dinner at their usual steakhouse. "You want to do what?" Linda asked, setting down her wine glass. "We have people for that kind of thing, Robert. Market researchers, consultants." Robert shook his head. "They won't see what I can see. The employees will know they're being watched. I need to experience it myself, see the daily operations through their eyes." Linda studied him for a moment. "You've always been our numbers guy. What brought this on?" "Maybe that's the problem," Robert replied. 20 years, and I've never spent more than an hour on the actual floor where our business happens. How can I make decisions that affect thousands of lives when I don't understand their reality?" 2 weeks later, Bob Miller reported for his first day of training at store number 17, their busiest location in a working-class neighborhood. He'd traded his tailored suits for khakis and button-downs from their own men's department. His executive assistant was the only other person who knew his true identity, forwarding urgent matters to his personal email while maintaining the fiction that he was on a leadership retreat. The store manager, Tom, barely looked up from his inventory sheets when introducing Robert to the staff. "New cashier, Bob, someone show him the ropes." His dismissive tone made Robert wonder if this management style was part of the problem. A young woman stepped forward. "I can train him." Her voice was quiet but confident. "Fine, Eliza, he's all yours," Tom said, disappearing into his office. Eliza Martinez offered her hand. "Welcome aboard. The first day can be overwhelming, but you'll get the hang of it." Robert noticed immediately how efficiently she moved, guiding him through the labyrinthine stockroom, explaining inventory codes, demonstrating the ancient cash register system that seemed unnecessarily complicated. She was patient but never wasted a moment, covering in 3 hours what the employee manual suggested should take a full day. "You're good at this," Robert remarked genuinely. A small smile appeared. 3 years of practice. Plus I teach my daughter sometimes if you can explain something to an 8-year-old, you can explain it to anyone." The mention of her daughter briefly lit up her face before she returned to her professional demeanor. By day 3, Robert's feet were killing him. He'd never stood for 8 hours straight in his life, and the thin store-issued insoles did little to help. During his break, he collapsed onto a chair in the dingy break room, watching as other employees chatted, scrolled through their phones, or wolfed down microwave meals. But he noticed something odd. Eliza, who had been his primary trainer, never seemed to eat lunch. She would clock out, make a quick phone call in the hallway, smile softly at whatever the person on the other end said, and then either return to work early or disappear entirely, only to slip back in minutes before her break ended. On day 5, curiosity got the better of him. When Eliza left for her break, Robert followed at a discreet distance. She walked quickly down 3 blocks, turning into the playground of Westside Elementary School. There, sitting on a bench, was a small girl with Eliza's same warm brown eyes and serious expression. The change in Eliza was immediate and striking. Her professional reserve melted away as she hugged her daughter fiercely, then sat beside her. Robert watched from behind a tree as Eliza pulled out a small paper bag and divided its meager contents. Half a sandwich, a few carrot sticks, 1 small apple cut in 2. The little girl tried to push the larger portion back to her mother. "You need to eat too, Mom. I had a big breakfast, Maya, promise. And we'll have a special dinner tonight, okay?" The girl didn't look convinced but took a small bite of her sandwich. They talked quietly, Eliza checking a notebook in the girl's lap, praising something written there. All too soon, Eliza checked her watch and gave her daughter one more hug. "Be good for Mrs. Chen after school. I'll pick you up at 6, okay?" Robert hurried back to the store, his mind racing. The next day, he deliberately took his break when Eliza took hers, but this time he stopped at the deli across the street, buying 2 sandwiches and drinks. He intercepted her just as she was leaving. "Hey, Eliza. I was heading out for lunch and wondered if you'd join me. I have some questions about the inventory system." He held up the deli bag. "My treat. For all your help this week." Hesitation flickered across her face. "That's nice of you, but I usually—" "It won't take long," Robert said. "And honestly, I could use the company. Starting a new job at my age isn't easy." Something in his tone must have resonated with her. "Okay, but just for 15 minutes. They sat on a bench outside the store, and Robert noticed how Eliza carefully wrapped half her sandwich after taking only a few bites. "For later?" he asked casually. Eliza looked embarrassed. "For my daughter. She loves turkey and Swiss." Robert nodded, sensing her discomfort. "How old is she?" 8. Her name's Maya." The pride in her voice was unmistakable. "That's a beautiful name." "Is she in school nearby?" Eliza nodded. "Yes, 3rd grade at Westside. She's really smart, loves reading and science." She paused, then added, "I usually spend my breaks with her, just to check in. She's been having a rough time lately." Robert kept his expression neutral. "Is everything okay?" Something in his genuine concern must have cracked the professional wall Eliza maintained. She looked down at her hands. "Maya has asthma. It got worse this year, and the new medication is expensive, even with insurance. Our apartment building had some mold issues, which triggered it. But moving isn't an option right now with rental prices what they are." She shook her head. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear all this." "No, please," Robert said. "Sometimes it helps to talk." Over the next few minutes, the story emerged in pieces. Eliza was taking online classes at night after Maya went to bed, trying to finish her business degree. Her ex-husband had left 3 years ago and rarely paid child support on time. The medical bills had wiped out her small savings. Between rent, utilities, and medicine, there was barely enough left for food, let alone anything else an 8-year-old might want or need. "We're managing, though," she said firmly, standing up as their break neared its end. "Maya's worth every sacrifice, and things will get better once I finish my degree." As they walked back to the store, Robert felt a strange mix of emotions: admiration for this woman's quiet strength, shame at how disconnected he'd been from the realities of his employees' lives, and a growing determination to do something meaningful with what he was learning. The following week, Robert continued his undercover work as Bob the cashier, but with fresh eyes. He began noticing things about his coworkers he'd missed before, like how Jerry from electronics worked through his breaks to help customers find exactly what they needed. Yet his department's numbers never reflected that extra effort. Or how Diane in housewares carried a battered photo of her elderly mother, whom she cared for before and after shifts, but his thoughts kept returning to Eliza and Maya. On Tuesday, he deliberately positioned himself at the register next to hers. "You're getting pretty good at this," Eliza remarked as he successfully handled a complicated return without calling for help. "I had an excellent teacher," Robert replied, meaning it. The morning rush kept them busy, a steady stream of customers flowing through their checkout lines. During a rare quiet moment, Robert noticed Eliza discreetly checking her phone, her brow furrowing with worry. "Everything okay?" he asked when the last customer had left. She quickly tucked the phone away. "It's fine. Just school stuff." But an hour later, her phone rang and Tom grudgingly allowed her to take the call in the back room. When she returned, her face was pale. "I need to go," she told Tom. "Maya's school called. She's having trouble breathing, and they've already called an ambulance." Tom looked annoyed. "We're short-staffed today. Can't someone else get her?" Robert watched disbelief and panic flash across Eliza's face. "She's 8 years old and being taken to the hospital alone. There is no someone else." "Fine," Tom sighed, "but this is coming out of your personal time, not sick leave. Policy is policy." As Eliza rushed to gather her things, Robert made a split-second decision. "I'll cover her register," he told Tom. "Just put me on a double shift." Tom looked surprised but nodded. "Suit yourself, new guy." Eliza gave Robert a grateful look. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know when I'll be back." "Don't worry about it," Robert assured her. "Your daughter needs you. That's all that matters." After Eliza left, Robert's mind was far from the monotonous beeping of the scanner. He thought about the company's health insurance policy, which he himself had approved 3 years ago as a cost-saving measure. It reduced coverage for dependents while maintaining executive benefits. At the time, it had seemed like a necessary business decision. Now, putting a face to those numbers, he felt ashamed. That night, Robert skipped his usual dinner at home and drove to County General Hospital instead. He felt strangely nervous as he approached the information desk, a stuffed animal and a bag of books from the hospital gift shop in hand. "I'm looking for Maya Martinez," he told the receptionist. "Her mother is my coworker." After being directed to the pediatric floor, Robert found Eliza sitting in an uncomfortable-looking chair beside a hospital bed. Maya was asleep, a nebulizer mask beside her and an IV in her small arm. Eliza looked up, startled to see him. "Bob? What are you doing here?" Robert held up his offerings awkwardly. "I thought Maya might like something to read when she's feeling better. And the bear, well, hospitals can be scary places." Eliza's eyes welled with tears. That's really kind of you. You didn't have to do that." "How is she?" he asked, setting the gifts on the bedside table. "Better now. The doctor says it was a severe asthma attack, triggered by something at school. They're keeping her overnight for observation." She rubbed her eyes. "I should have seen it coming. She was wheezing a little this morning, but we were running late, and I thought her regular inhaler would be enough." "Hey," Robert said gently. "Don't do that to yourself. Kids get sick. You got here as fast as you could." Eliza nodded, but he could see the guilt weighing on her. "I keep thinking if I could afford a better apartment away from the mold, if I could be there in the mornings instead of rushing to an early shift." Robert took the seat beside her. "Is there anything you need?" "Anything I can do?" She shook her head. "You've already done more than most people would. Covering my shift coming here." She attempted a smile. "Most new coworkers don't go this far." "I'm not most people," Robert replied simply. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching Maya's chest rise and fall in peaceful sleep. Eventually, Eliza spoke again, her voice quiet. "When Maya was born, I had all these dreams for her, for us. I was going to finish college, find a good job with normal hours. We'd have a little house with a yard for her to play in." She looked around the sterile hospital room. This wasn't part of the plan. "Life rarely follows our plans," Robert said thoughtfully. "But from what I can see, you're doing an amazing job. She's lucky to have you." Eliza smiled sadly. "Sometimes I think it's the other way around. On my worst days, she's the reason I keep going. She deserves so much better than—" She gestured vaguely. "Than lunches split in half and secondhand clothes and a mom who's always tired." Robert felt something twist in his chest. As CFO, he'd slashed budgets and cut corners for years, always justifying it as necessary for the bottom line. How many Elizas had those decisions affected? How many Mayas? "Everyone at the store respects you, you know," he told her. "I've been watching. Even Tom comes to you when he can't figure something out." Eliza laughed softly. "Tom's not so bad. He's under pressure too. The regional managers are always on him about labor costs and productivity metrics. Regional managers who reported to executives who reported to Robert. The chain of responsibility led right back to his desk with its view of the city skyline. A nurse came in to check Maya's vitals, and Robert stood to leave, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this private struggle. "I should go." "Will you be at work tomorrow?" Eliza shook her head. "I need to stay with Maya until she's released and then keep her home for a day or two. Tom's not happy about it, but—" She shrugged, leaving the sentence unfinished. "Don't worry about Tom," Robert said with newfound conviction. "I'll talk to him." As he drove home that night, the plush neighborhoods gave way to apartment complexes, then to the more modest area where Eliza likely lived. He thought about his own daughter, now grown and studying abroad, who had never wanted for anything. He thought about the company policy manual sitting on his shelf, filled with rules that looked reasonable on paper but crumbled in the face of real human needs. Robert pulled into his driveway, his comfortable house dark except for the porch light his housekeeper always left on for him. Inside, his kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances he rarely used, his refrigerator stocked with prepared meals he could easily afford. He sat at his kitchen table, opened his personal laptop, and began to type. Not spreadsheets or financial projections, but ideas, radical ones. An emergency assistance fund for employees, revised healthcare coverage, flexible scheduling for parents, Educational subsidies. By morning, Robert had a plan. It would cut into profits, certainly. The board would resist. But for the first time in years, he felt certain he was doing the right thing, not just for the balance sheet, but for the people whose lives were affected by every decision made in that corner office. Tomorrow, he would talk to Tom about Eliza's situation. But soon, very soon, he would reveal his true identity and put his plan into action. The thought both terrified and exhilarated him. The next morning, Robert arrived at store number 17 early, determined to speak with Tom before the day began. He found the store manager already in his office, surrounded by sales reports and schedules. "Morning, Bob," Tom said without looking up. "You're here early." "I wanted to talk about Eliza Martinez," Robert said, closing the door behind him. Tom sighed, finally meeting his gaze. "Look, I know you're friends with her or whatever, but store policy is clear. 3 unplanned absences in a month can lead to disciplinary action. Her daughter is in the hospital," Robert said, keeping his voice level despite the anger rising inside him. "That's hardly an unplanned shopping trip." "Rules are rules," Tom replied, though he had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It comes from above, you know. Regional keeps track of every absence, every late arrival. They breathe down my neck about it, and I have to pass that pressure on." Robert studied the manager's face, the dark circles under his eyes, the worry lines etched across his forehead. Tom wasn't the villain here. He was just another cog in a system Robert himself had helped create. What if there was another way? Robert asked carefully. What if someone covered her shifts until her daughter is better? "We're already short-staffed," Tom said, gesturing to the schedule on his desk. "Corporate keeps cutting our labor budget. I'm supposed to run this whole place with fewer hours than last year, despite increased sales targets." "I'll cover her shifts," Robert offered. "All of them. Put me on doubles if you have to." Tom looked at him with newfound respect. "That's generous, but why would you do that for someone you just met?" Robert thought about Eliza sharing her meager lunch with Maya, about her determination to build a better life despite every obstacle. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because someday I might need someone to do the same for me." For the first time, Tom smiled, a genuine expression that softened his harried features. "You know what? I like you, Bob. I've been doing this job for 11 years, and it's rare to find someone who still cares about their coworkers like that." He tapped his pen on the schedule. "All right, I'll work it out. Tell Eliza her job is safe, but I can't guarantee her pay for the missed days. That's beyond my authority." "Thank you," Robert said, relief washing over him. "And about the pay situation? Let me worry about that." Over the next 3 days, Robert worked Eliza's shifts in addition to his own, his muscles protesting the long hours on his feet. But every ache reminded him of Eliza, who had been doing this for years while raising a child and studying at night. His respect for her and his determination to change things grew with each passing hour. On the 4th day, his phone rang during his brief break. "It was Eliza. Bob, it's me. Maya's being released today. The doctors say she can go back to school next week if she continues to improve." "That's wonderful news," Robert said sincerely. "How are you holding up?" There was a pause. "I'm okay, but—" "Tom called me. He said you've been covering all my shifts?" Her voice was a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "You barely know me. Why would you do that?" "I told you I'm not most people," Robert replied. "Besides, we all need help sometimes." "I don't know how to thank you." "No need for thanks. Just focus on getting Maya better." He hesitated, then added, "And Eliza, don't worry about the missed pay. It's being taken care of." "What? How?" "I'll explain everything soon. Just trust me, okay?" After hanging up, Robert knew it was time. He'd seen enough, learned enough. Opening his personal email, he sent a message to his assistant at corporate headquarters, asking her to arrange a meeting with Linda, the CEO, for tomorrow afternoon. That evening, he visited Eliza's apartment, bringing dinner from a nearby restaurant and more books for Maya. The building was as he'd feared, old, with visible water damage in the hallways and a pervasive smell of dampness that couldn't be good for a child with asthma. But inside Eliza's small 2-bedroom unit, there was warmth and love evident in every carefully arranged corner. Family photos lined the walls. A small desk was covered with Eliza's textbooks and study notes. Maya's artwork adorned the refrigerator. Maya, still pale but clearly improving, sat at the kitchen table drawing while Eliza prepared plates for their takeout dinner. "You didn't have to bring food," Eliza protested. Though the relief in her eyes told a different story, Robert suspected the hospital bills had stretched her already tight budget to the breaking point. "Consider it a celebration of Maya feeling better," he replied, setting down the bags. "Besides, I hate eating alone." Over dinner, Maya charmed him with stories about her science class and her dream of becoming a doctor, to help kids like me. Robert found himself sharing tales of his own daughter's childhood, carefully edited to remove any hints of privilege that might reveal his true identity. After Maya went to bed, Eliza and Robert sat in the small living room, talking quietly over cups of tea. "You never talk much about yourself," she observed. "Have you always been a cashier?" Robert smiled, knowing the moment of truth was approaching. "No, I've had several jobs over the years, but right now I'm where I need to be." "Well, I'm glad you ended up at our store," Eliza said softly. "What you did this week, covering my shifts, visiting Maya, all of it, it reminded me that there are good people in the world." "There are," Robert agreed. "Sometimes they're just hidden in unexpected places." He took a deep breath. "Eliza, there's something I need to tell you. About who I really am." Her expression grew concerned. "What do you mean?" "My name isn't Bob Miller. It's Robert Calloway. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Midstate Retail." The color drained from Eliza's face. "What? I don't understand." Gently, Robert explained his undercover mission, watching as shock, confusion, and finally wariness crossed her features. "So this whole time, you were, what, spying on us?" Her voice had an edge he hadn't heard before. "Not spying," Robert said quickly. "Learning, trying to understand what was happening in our stores, why employee satisfaction was dropping, why turnover was so high. And I found my answers. In you, in Tom, in every hardworking person being crushed by policies I helped create." Eliza stood pacing the small living room. "I don't know what to think. Was any of it real?" "Your concern for Maya?" "All of it was real," Robert insisted, standing to face her. "I didn't plan to get involved in your lives, but watching you share your lunch with Maya, learning about your struggles, it changed something in me, made me see what I've been missing all these years behind spreadsheets and profit margins." "So what happens now?" Eliza asked, arms crossed protectively over her chest. "You go back to your corporate office and what? Write a report about the poor, struggling cashier?" "No," Robert said firmly. "I go back and change things. Real meaningful changes that will help you and everyone like you in our company, and I want your help to do it." Her skepticism was evident. "My help? How could I possibly help you?" "Because you live the reality of our policies every day. You know what needs to change better than anyone in our boardroom ever could." He pulled out his phone, showing her the notes he'd been making. "I have ideas. An emergency assistance fund for employees facing medical crises or family emergencies, better healthcare coverage especially for dependents, educational subsidies for employees pursuing degrees, flexible scheduling options for parents." As he spoke, Eliza's expression slowly shifted from suspicion to cautious hope. "You're serious about this?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my career," Robert replied. "Tomorrow I'm meeting with our CEO to propose these changes. And I want you to come with me." "Me? At corporate headquarters?" Eliza laughed nervously. "I don't belong there." "That's exactly why you need to be there," Robert insisted. "The people making decisions need to see the human impact of those decisions. They need to hear your story and Maya's story firsthand." Eliza sank back onto the couch, overwhelmed. "This is a lot to take in." "I know," Robert acknowledged, sitting beside her. "And I'm sorry for the deception. But I'm not sorry I met you or that I learned what I did. You've changed how I see everything. Eliza, you've reminded me that behind every policy, every budget cut, every corporate decision are real people with real lives." They talked late into the night, Robert answering her questions honestly, sharing his vision for a company that valued its people as much as its profits. By the time he left, the wariness in Eliza's eyes had been replaced by something new, a cautious but growing trust, and perhaps even the first flickers of hope. "I'll pick you up at noon tomorrow," he said as he prepared to leave. "The meeting is at 2. Bring Maya's medical bills if you have them. And Eliza, whatever happens, things are going to get better. I promise you that." As Robert drove home through the quiet streets, he felt lighter than he had in years. Tomorrow would bring challenges, convincing Linda, facing the board, beginning the hard work of real change. But for the first time in his career, he was certain he was fighting for the right thing. The next morning, Robert woke earlier than usual, his mind already racing with the day ahead. He selected his charcoal gray suit, not his most expensive, but one that projected authority while still being approachable. Today wasn't about intimidation. It was about connection and change. As promised, he arrived at Eliza's apartment at noon. When she opened the door, he was struck by the transformation. Gone was the tired cashier in a wrinkled uniform. Instead, Eliza wore a simple navy blue dress that she'd clearly taken pains to press perfectly. Her hair was neatly styled, her makeup minimal but carefully applied. She looked professional, confident, and terribly nervous. "Is this okay?" she asked, gesturing to her outfit. "It's what I wear for my business classes presentations, but I've never been to a corporate headquarters before." "You look perfect," Robert assured her. "Do you have everything you need? The medical bills we talked about?" Eliza nodded, holding up a worn folder. "All here. Maya's with our neighbor, Mrs. Chen. I told her I had a job interview." She gave a shaky laugh. "I guess in a way that's true." The drive to corporate headquarters took them from Eliza's modest neighborhood through increasingly affluent areas of the city. Robert watched as Eliza took in the changing landscape, her eyes widening as they pulled into the gleaming glass and steel building that housed Midstate Retail's executive offices. "This is where you work?" she asked quietly. "Most days," Robert confirmed, suddenly seeing the imposing structure through her eyes, how removed it was from the everyday reality of their stores, how intimidating it must appear to someone who'd never stepped foot inside such a place. As they walked through the lobby, heads turned. Robert's assistant, Patricia, met them at the elevator, her expression professional but unable to hide her curiosity about Eliza. "Everything's arranged as you requested," Patricia told him. "Ms. Winters is waiting in the conference room. The board members will join via video call at 2:30. "Thank you, Patricia," Robert said warmly. He turned to Eliza. "This is Patricia Davis, my right hand and the only person who knew where I really was these past weeks." Eliza shook Patricia's hand, her nervousness evident. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise," Patricia replied with genuine warmth. "Mr. Calloway has spoken highly of you." In his office, Robert gave Eliza a few minutes to collect herself before the meeting. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city spread below them. "My apartment building is somewhere over there," she said, pointing toward the eastern edge of the city. "Maya and I watch the sunset reflect off these buildings sometimes. She always asks what it's like up here in the sky." She turned to face him. "Now I can tell her." Robert joined her at the window. "When I first got this office, I spent hours just staring at this view. It made me feel powerful above it all, but I realize now that was the problem. I was too far removed from the lives affected by our decisions." He checked his watch. "It's time." "Are you ready?" Eliza took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. "As I'll ever be." Linda Winters, CEO of Midstate Retail for the past 8 years, was not a woman who was easily surprised. But when Robert walked into the conference room with Eliza at his side, genuine shock registered on her typically composed face. "Robert," she said, rising to greet them. "I wasn't aware this was a group presentation. Linda, this is Eliza Martinez, a cashier at Store 17, and an essential part of what I want to discuss today," Robert replied smoothly. "Eliza, this is Linda Winters, our CEO." To her credit, Linda recovered quickly, extending her hand to Eliza. "Ms. Martinez, welcome to corporate." As they took their seats, Robert could sense Eliza's tension. Under the table, he gave her a reassuring nod. Then he began. 2 weeks ago, I went undercover as a cashier at Store 17. What I learned there has fundamentally changed my understanding of our business and what we need to do moving forward. For the next 20 minutes, Robert outlined everything he'd observed: the understaffing, the pressure on store managers, the disconnect between corporate policies and on-the-ground realities. He shared statistics on employee turnover, healthcare costs, and productivity losses. But numbers only tell part of the story, he concluded, turning to Eliza. "That's why I've asked Ms. Martinez to join us today. Her experience illustrates exactly what's at stake." Eliza cleared her throat, her hands clutching the folder of medical bills like a lifeline. When she began speaking, her voice was soft but grew steadier with each word. "I've worked for Midstate for 3 years as a cashier. I'm also a single mother to an 8-year-old daughter with asthma, and I'm studying business administration online. This week my daughter had a severe asthma attack at school and was hospitalized for 3 days. She opened the folder, sliding a stack of medical bills across the table. These are the cost for just those 3 days. Even with our employee insurance, my out-of-pocket expenses are more than a month's rent. The coverage for dependents is minimal at best. Linda examined the bills, her expression unreadable. Before her attack, Eliza continued, I was already choosing between filling her prescriptions and buying groceries some weeks. I've been skipping lunches to make sure she has enough to eat. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I have some college education and prospects for advancement. Many of my coworkers are in even tougher situations. Robert watched Linda's face carefully. The CEO was known for her tough business decisions, but she was also a mother herself. Ms. Martinez, Linda said finally, I appreciate your candor, but Midstate is a business, not a charity. We have shareholders to answer to, profit margins to maintain. With all due respect, Ms. Winters, Eliza replied with unexpected confidence. Treating employees better isn't charity, it's good business. Do you know how many experienced workers we've lost in my store alone this year? 10. The cost of training their replacements, the lost productivity, the decreased customer satisfaction. It all adds up to more than what better benefits would have cost. A smile tugged at Robert's lips. This was exactly why he'd wanted Eliza here. She understood both the human and business aspects of the situation in a way that resonated differently than when it came from him. Furthermore, Eliza continued, warming to her subject, customers notice when employees are unhappy or stressed. They notice when we're constantly short-staffed with new hires who don't know the systems yet. It affects their shopping experience and ultimately your bottom line. The boardroom doors opened, and Patricia announced that the video call with the board members was ready. As the large screen at the end of the room flickered to life, revealing the faces of 6 serious-looking executives, Robert felt a moment of doubt. Was he asking too much? Risking too much? Then he glanced at Eliza, who had straightened in her chair, folder of bills neatly arranged before her, ready to face whatever came next. Her courage strengthened his resolve. For the next hour, Robert presented his plan to the board. The Emergency Assistance Fund, the revised healthcare policy, the educational subsidies, the flexible scheduling. He showed projections of decreased turnover and increased productivity that could offset the costs. But most powerfully, he let Eliza speak. Her simple, direct explanations of employees' daily struggles, cutting through corporate jargon and making the human cost impossible to ignore. What you're proposing would cut significantly into our profit margins for at least the next 2 quarters, one board member pointed out. Yes, Robert acknowledged. But I believe it's an investment that will pay dividends in employee retention, customer satisfaction, and long-term growth. Sometimes we need to take a short-term hit for long-term gains. And what if it doesn't work? Another asked skeptically. Then I'll take full responsibility, Robert replied without hesitation. But I'm willing to stake my reputation on this. I believe in it that strongly. Linda, who had been quiet for some time, finally spoke. This is unconventional, to say the least. But there's merit in what you're proposing. She turned to Eliza. Ms. Martinez, if these changes were implemented, what impact do you think they would have on your colleagues? Eliza considered the question carefully. Hope, she said simply. It would give people hope that hard work actually matters, that the company sees us as people, not just numbers. And when people have hope, they work harder. They care more. They stay longer. The meeting ran over by nearly an hour with questions, counter-proposals, and heated debate. Throughout it all, Robert watched Eliza hold her own against executives with decades more experience and millions more in salary. Her quiet dignity and practical knowledge a powerful counterpoint to abstract financial theories. Finally, Linda called for a vote. One by one, the board members weighed in. 4 in favor, 2 against. Motion carries, Linda announced, a note of surprise in her voice. Robert, you'll oversee implementation, starting with a pilot program at Store 17, then rolling out company-wide if the initial results are promising. She turned to Eliza. And Ms. Martinez, it seems we have an opening in our Human Resources Department for someone with first-hand understanding of employee needs. Would you be interested in joining the implementation team? Eliza's eyes widened. Yes. Yes, I would. As they left the conference room, Robert felt a weight lift from his shoulders. There was still much work to be done, many details to hammer out. But the first, hardest step had been taken. In the elevator, Eliza finally allowed herself a broad smile. Did that really just happen? Did they actually agree? They did, Robert confirmed, returning her smile. And I believe your job offer just happened as well. Congratulations, Ms. Martinez. I can't believe it, she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. Maya's going to be so excited. A regular schedule, better insurance, a real career path. She looked up at Robert. Thank you. For seeing me. For listening. No, Robert said quietly. Thank you. For showing me what I'd been missing all these years. For reminding me that business isn't just about numbers, it's about people. As they stepped out into the sunlight, Robert realized something had fundamentally shifted. Not just for Eliza and her daughter, not just for the employees of store number 17, but for him as well. After decades of climbing the corporate ladder, he'd finally remembered why he'd wanted to be in business in the first place. To make things better, not just more profitable. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time in years, Robert Calloway felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The pilot program at store number 17 became the talk of the company, with Robert and Eliza working side by side to implement the changes they'd proposed. The Emergency Assistance Fund was established first, providing immediate relief to employees facing medical crises or unexpected hardships. Next came the revised healthcare policy, with substantially improved coverage for dependents. The educational subsidies followed, along with a flexible scheduling system that accommodated working parents and students. The morning of the company-wide announcement, Robert stood in the back of store number 17, watching employees gather for what they'd been told was a routine meeting. Tom had transformed too over these months, the permanent worry lines on his face softening as the new policies relieved much of his daily stress. Everyone here? Tom asked, scanning the group. Good. We have some visitors from corporate today with an important announcement. Robert stepped forward. No longer Bob the cashier, but openly the CFO, though he deliberately dressed down for the occasion in slacks and a button-down rather than his usual suit. Good morning, everyone, he began. Many of you know me from my time working here undercover. Others have gotten to know me over the past few months as we've implemented changes at this store. Today I'm here to announce that those changes are going company-wide, effective immediately. A murmur ran through the assembled employees. Every store in the mid-state chain will now have access to the Emergency Assistance Fund. Every employee's health care plan will include the improved dependent coverage you've been benefiting from here. The educational subsidies and flexible scheduling options will be available across the board. The murmur grew louder, faces lighting up with surprise and hope. But that's not all, Robert continued. Based on the success we've seen here, the decreased turnover, the improved customer satisfaction scores, the increased productivity, the board has approved an additional investment. Starting next month, we'll be implementing a company-wide minimum wage increase of 15%. The murmur became cheers, with several employees hugging each other or wiping away tears. None of this would have happened, Robert said when the noise had subsided, without one person's courage and determination. Someone who showed me what was really happening in our stores, who reminded me that behind every policy decision are real people with real lives. He gestured to Eliza, who stood to the side in her new corporate attire. Eliza Martinez is being promoted to Director of Employee Advocacy, a new position created specifically to ensure that employee voices are heard at the highest levels of the company. More cheers erupted as Eliza stepped forward, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. I was standing right where you are 6 months ago, she told her former co-workers, working the register, worrying about bills, trying to take care of my daughter. I never imagined I'd be here today. But what I've learned through all of this is that change is possible when people listen to each other. Really listen. She glanced at Robert with gratitude. And I promise that in my new role I will always listen to you. After the announcement, as employees drifted back to their stations buzzing with excitement, Jerry from electronics approached Robert. You know, he said, when you first showed up as Bob, the new cashier, I had you pegged as someone just passing through. Never thought you'd be the one to change everything. Robert smiled. Sometimes the most important changes come from unexpected places. Later that afternoon, Robert and Eliza sat in her new office, smaller than his but with the same impressive view of the city. On her desk stood a framed drawing from Maya, showing 3 stick figures, herself, Eliza, and a tall man labeled Mr. Bob, standing in front of what appeared to be the corporate building. "She still calls you Mr. Bob," Eliza said, noticing his gaze on the drawing. "I've tried to explain that you're actually Mr. Robert, but she insists that doesn't sound right." Robert laughed. "Mr. Bob is fine by me. How is she doing?" "Better than ever," Eliza beamed. "The new apartment is mold-free. Her doctors say her lung function has improved significantly and she's thriving at school. She joined the science club last week. Future doctor in the making," Robert noted. "Maybe," Eliza agreed. "Whatever she decides, at least now she has options." She gestured to the papers spread across her desk, employee feedback forms from stores across the country. "Just like all of these people will have more options now." Their conversation was interrupted by Patricia, who appeared at the door. "Sorry to interrupt, but the press is here for the announcement." "They're set up in the main conference room." Robert nodded. "We'll be right there." The decision to go public with their company-wide changes had been Linda's idea. "If we're doing this," she'd said, "let's make sure everyone knows about it. Not just as good PR, but to challenge other companies to follow suit." As they walked to the conference room, Robert felt a familiar nervousness. Public speaking had never been his favorite part of the job. "Any last-minute advice?" he asked Eliza. "Just tell the truth," she replied simply. "It's worked pretty well for us so far." The conference room was packed with reporters from local and national media, cameras flashing as Robert, Eliza, and Linda took their seats at the front. Linda began with a brief introduction, then handed the microphone to Robert. "6 months ago," he began, "I went undercover as a cashier in one of our stores. What I discovered changed not just how I view our business, but how I understand my responsibility as a leader. Today we're announcing a comprehensive overhaul of our employee policies, designed to create a workplace where everyone can thrive, not just survive." As he outlined the changes, Robert noticed a shift in the reporter's usual skepticism. There was genuine interest, even approval, as he detailed the emergency fund, the healthcare improvements, the wage increases. When he introduced Eliza and explained her journey from cashier to director, several journalists leaned forward, clearly recognizing the human interest at the heart of the story. "But this isn't just about being nice," Robert emphasized. "It's about smart business. In the 6 months since implementing these changes at our pilot location, employee turnover has decreased by 68%. Customer satisfaction has increased by 22%. Sales are up by 15%. Taking care of our people isn't just the right thing to do, it's profitable." The Q&A session that followed was lively, with reporters probing for details on implementation costs and projected financial impacts. Through it all, Robert maintained that while there had been short-term costs, the long-term benefits, both human and financial, far outweighed them. When a reporter asked Eliza what message she had for other companies, her answer was characteristically straightforward. "Look at your frontline workers. Really look at them. They're not just numbers on a spreadsheet or interchangeable parts in a machine. They're people with families, dreams, struggles, and incredible potential. When you invest in them, you're investing in your company's future." After the press conference, Linda pulled Robert and Eliza aside. "Well done, both of you. The board is already getting calls from investors wanting to know more about our approach, and 3 competing retail chains have reached out to discuss our policies." She smiled, a rare, genuine expression from the usually reserved CEO. "It seems we may have started something bigger than we intended." That evening, Robert drove to Eliza's new apartment for a dinner she'd insisted on hosting to celebrate. The building was modern and well-maintained, with a small playground visible from her second-floor unit. Inside, the space was modest but comfortable, more than twice the size of her previous apartment, with large windows and new furniture. Maya greeted him at the door with an excited hug. "Mr. Bob, Mom says you were on TV today. Were you scared?" "I would be scared with all those cameras." Robert laughed, following her inside. "A little scared, yes, but your mom helped me be brave." "She's good at that," Maya agreed solemnly. "She helps me be brave at the doctors, too." The apartment smelled of home cooking, and Robert realized it had been years since he'd been invited to a family dinner that wasn't at a restaurant or catered. Since his divorce and his daughter moving abroad, meals had become functional rather than social, something to fit in between meetings or catch up on emails during. Eliza emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Hope you like enchiladas. It's my grandmother's recipe." "Sounds perfect," Robert replied and meant it. Over dinner, they avoided talk of work, instead sharing stories and laughing as Maya recounted her science club adventures. Robert found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did. The constant weight of corporate responsibility temporarily lifted. As he helped Eliza clear the dishes while Maya finished her homework, he said quietly, "Thank you for this. For reminding me what it's like to just be a person, not a title." "You've always been a person, Robert," Eliza replied. "That's what made all of this possible. You saw people, not numbers. You listened. You cared enough to act." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "You know, when you first told me who you really were, I was angry. I thought everything, your concern for Maya, your help with my shifts, had been fake. Part of your undercover role. And now?" Robert asked. "Now I understand that going undercover didn't change who you are, it revealed it. The real Robert Calloway was always someone who cared about doing the right thing. You just needed a reminder." Later, as Robert drove home through the city, he took a detour past Store Lodge 17. The lights were still on, the evening shift busy with customers. He parked across the street, watching the now familiar rhythm of the store. Cashiers chatting with customers, stockers efficiently filling shelves, managers moving through it all with noticeably less stress than 6 months ago. His phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Expansion plans for employee initiatives." "Bring Eliza and data," Robert smiled, typing his confirmation. There was still so much to do. So many more stores, more employees whose lives could be improved. But today, at least, he could see the tangible results of what they'd started. Not just in spreadsheets and profit margins, but in the face of a little girl who could breathe easier, a mother who no longer had to choose between food and medicine, employees who came to work with dignity rather than desperation. 6 months ago, he'd gone undercover looking for answers to falling productivity and rising turnover. What he'd found instead was something far more valuable, a reminder of why businesses existed in the first place, not just to make money, but to create something meaningful, something that improved lives rather than exploited them. As he drove home under the glow of city lights, Robert felt a deep sense of contentment. His career had been successful by any financial measure, but for the first time in decades he felt truly proud of the work he was doing. Not because it made him wealthy or powerful, but because it made a difference, one person, one family, one store at a time. And that, he realized, was the greatest success of all.